Great. Well, I am so excited to have today my guest, Queenie Choo, Chief Executive Officer of S.U.C.C.E.S.S, a diverse, inclusive, and multi-service agency right here in British Columbia that assists people in all stages of their lives in Canada. Ms. Choo immigrated to Canada in 1980 and originally settled in Alberta, where she completed her master's in nursing, created and managed the first culturally based continuum of care for seniors, and became the executive director for Alberta Health Services in 2010, which my wife, you won't know this, actually worked for them for a while. Ms. Choo started her tenure at S.U.C.C.E.S.S in 2012. She was recruited there and has been a figurehead in the community ever since. Whether it's organizing the annual Bridge to Success Gala, serving on Premier Horgan's Provincial Economic Recovery Task Force, or serving in her role as an honorary naval captain of the Royal Canadian Navy, Ms. Choo, I welcome you to the show and thanks for taking the time to join us today.
Thank you for having me.
So, Queenie, let's start with talking about your journey from Hong Kong. You were 18 years old when you left Hong Kong.
Right.
And when we spoke yesterday, you told me that you didn't first come to Canada, you actually went to the UK first. So why don't we spend a couple minutes of you telling us about your journey from Hong Kong to coming here to Vancouver/Richmond?
Sure. At the age of 18, with one suitcase, all the way from Hong Kong to England, UK. And that's a phenomenal, I guess, journey for me at that age, but being fearless at that age as well. So it really encouraged me to go further and see the rest of the world. And so I went for nursing, study nursing at one of the largest and well-known English hospital in downtown London.
Okay.
So from there, I spent 5 years in London, UK, and before I actually migrated to Edmonton, Alberta.
So how does a young lady go from being in the heart of London, having made this big jump from Hong Kong, to Edmonton, Alberta?
Well, that was a little bit challenge because first of all, I arrived in Edmonton, Alberta in December the 18th to be exact, in 1980. And of course, it was minus 40, and not knowing about the weather and the deep cold weather in Alberta. So there I was, shocked by the weather, but warmed by the people and, welcoming me there.
So obviously the weather didn't bring you to Edmonton. What brought you to Edmonton? Like how did you kind of make that decision to go from London? Was there a job offer? Was it schooling? What was it?
Yes, there was a whole kind of recruitment team from government of Alberta, which they had to go to recruit nurses because there was such a shortage of nurses in 1980, in Alberta. And there I was, fearless and kind of looking at seeing the rest of the world. There I go.
Yeah.
And it was amazing experience, I guess, from there.
Wow. And so how long were you in Alberta for?
Okay, so I was in Alberta since 1980 until 2012, moving to British Columbia.
Okay. Wow. So you have actually had a lot of years.
Yes.
Out in Alberta.
That's correct.
Do you know how to square dance?
I can do ice fishing too.
Can you really? Oh, Jasmine, I think you want to do ice fishing at some point. So you get recruited by S.U.C.C.E.S.S. They kind of headhunted you, did they not? And,
they did.
Yeah. And what, having spent so many years in Edmonton, what kind of inspired you to come here? Was it the lifestyle? Was it success? Was it a little bit of both?
Well, I think that first of all, it's a beautiful province, a beautiful British Columbia, the weather, the cuisine, and the diversity, and essentially it's by the ocean, and I love the ocean. As you know, I was born in Hong Kong, surrounded by the ocean as well.
Yeah.
So that childhood memory really draws me to the beautiful British Columbia.
Okay. Well, before we go and talk about success, I want to go back to that age of 18 when you left Hong Kong. What did your parents think about your idea? Were they encouraging of you to do that? Were they worried or nervous?
Well, I think it's a mixed bag of feelings from them, and definitely, well, my dad passed away when I was really young, so my mom raised us. First of all, I was a bit of kind of because I'm the youngest of the two, so I got kind of like pampered,
Okay.
right? I got spoiled, and going all the way to England and UK is kind of, a bit of letting go feelings by my mom.
Yeah.
So, but she felt that I should be able to make it and being independent there, so I did.
Oh, good for you. Have you had a chance to travel back to Hong Kong throughout your life?
Yeah, many times, and except during COVID, and
Yeah.
we couldn't now, but certainly fond memories to be a tourist back.
Yeah.
Now, being a Canadian, I live here. I live longer in Canada than that in Hong Kong.
Yeah, yeah. Well, good. Well, that's a nice intro, and I think a good segue into talking about your now role that you've been in for, I guess, this is your 9th year at S.U.C.C.E.S.S. So maybe just for the listeners to know, S.U.C.C.E.S.S was founded in early 1970, and it's one of the largest not-for-profit social service agencies in British Columbia. Your annual operating budget is $56 million, and you provide a wide range of services, including newcomer settlement, English language training, as well as senior programming and housing. So there's just my very quick overview of it. So maybe why don't you talk a little about S.U.C.C.E.S.S and what your organization does in more depth?
Well, certainly just go back to 1973 when S.U.C.C.E.S.S was established. It was established actually by a group of professional volunteers who felt those people coming from Hong Kong as an immigrants, they really facing a lot of challenges in terms of cultural differences and also language barriers. They felt that there's a need to support newcomers. So over the last 48 years, fast forward, we from a very much a community based volunteer served organization, only serving those Chinese immigrants from Hong Kong, to now 48 years after, we have evolved from a mom and pop shop, I should say, and to a really a multicultural, multilingual, and multi-services agency now. We serve people regardless of where they come from, their backgrounds, their color, their education, as well as sexual orientation, ages. We serve them when they have a need.
Okay. And Queenie, is it mostly immigrants, or that's the main sort of tying bond amongst all the people that use the services of S.U.C.C.E.S.S? Is it our new people to Canada?
Not exactly.
Okay.
Certainly, a lot of people are newcomers to Canada, but we also serve local British Columbians,
Okay.
Resident of British Columbia. So in terms of the employment, youth employment, we run the Work BC employment program, which is funded by the provincial government to increase sustainable employment, grow our economy, and also youth at risk. Also, we serve especially those who are dropouts from high school and unable to find sustainable employment over time. So we also serve those people who have a need for counseling services.
Okay.
We have the helpline to make sure people's mental health is supported, is a way to reach out to us in the language that they understand. So not necessarily only for newcomers, but also local residents of British Columbia, as long as there is a need. So we are the face of the community.
Oh, wow, that's really neat. So how many employees does S.U.C.C.E.S.S have?
We have approximately 500, full-time equivalents.
Wow.
Yes.
So where are you? Do you have one main campus location? I mean, 500, that's a lot of people. Or
we actually is quite spread out.
Okay.
I'm just amazed on the caliber of the staff, the location of our staff. We actually started from pre-arrival, which is a program where we serve people before they come to our Canadian soil.
Oh,
As long as they get an invitation by our immigration department from the federal government, they are actually eligible for, pre-arrival services where we provide, orientation in terms of employment, foreign credential recognition, how to find a school for the children, how to get their, housing, for
Right.
example. So really is to get them orientated before they come. Unfortunately, I didn't get that program.
yeah. I was going to
But,
say this is
But however, now, with a much more wide range of services for newcomers. So this is starting from pre-arrival, and we have pre-arrival offices in Asia as well, and they are fully funded by our federal government under the Immigration, Refugee, Citizenship Canada. So is to help those individuals who prepare the journey to Canada. So starting from there, we have staff over there. We also have staff at the airport, which is the reception, receiving and welcoming people to come to Canada. We are the only provider at the Vancouver International Airport where we have a kiosk, and we have over 20 languages capability to serve people who might have a language need when arrival at our international airport. And some of them might be also requiring translation, or for those individuals with large family coming from maybe from the tropical country, they may need also winter clothing, boots, and winter wear, and also a bit of amenities or basic supplies for the infants as well. So we cater that at the airport.
So they don't go through the shock you went through in December.
Exactly.
In Alberta.
Exactly. And certainly, we are very pleased that we did serve all the Syrian refugees, every single one of them.
Really?
Arriving at our international airport in Vancouver. So we actually, this is a little story I wanted to share, is we actually fundraise, so that we could provide a stuffed animal toy, whether it is a raccoon, a bear, or
beaver.
a beaver, or an elk. We wanted to present to every Syrian child with our stuffed animal. That's
No kangaroos.
as a symbol of Canada, because we wanted to extend our warm welcome to them.
Oh, that's
after
nice.
the journey,
Yeah, these people are coming from war-torn countries.
Exactly.
I've got to think, like, I guess I have the benefit of never having gone and done this journey like you did at 18, or these people are doing. But imagine that when you look at your experience, and you did it back in a time when there was like no connectivity in the world. There was no internet. There's no cell phone where you can get ideas. Some of these people are come in, but imagine they're coming for the first time, some of them.
Exactly.
Or many of them maybe.
Exactly. So from there at the airport, we also make sure, those people who are privately sponsored, so that we match their sponsors and them together the first time, because they had never met one another face to face. So we want to make sure they have that connection and make sure it's the right match at the airport. And some of them are very tragic because they have a lot of mental health issues because they come from a war-torn country. And some of them actually have domestic issues, and some of them have domestic kind of violence happened between the couples. And so all those kind of challenges we have to deal with at the airport. So it's not just purely reception. It's also medical health, mental health issue that we really have to provide and dispatch to the health authorities so that they can really support them medically and also mentally. So from then on, their journey will be looking at their destination so that we can actually transit them from the airport to where they needed to go. Sometimes it's an overnight stay, in Vancouver, and then the next morning, then they will, after the layover, they will transit to destination or the interior of BC. So that's all we do, and it is incredibly important program because imagine first time in Canada and landed at the airport where it could be amazingly busy and amazingly challenging to find the right place to get to the immigration kiosk and also pick up your baggage and clear custom. So imagine all this navigation, and we were so glad we were able to help.
Wow. Yeah, that is nice. So is that Success kiosk inside the airport before you get? Okay, well, that makes sense.
It's inside the security
so that they can.
A regular person was not allowed to go in.
Yeah.
It's inside as soon as they landed, then they go to, the CBSA kiosk, and then after they had the paper cleared, that they in fact established their eligibility to land here, then they come to us and we serve them in order to make sure everything is arranged for them.
Okay. So Queenie, I didn't realize that this is the extent of work that Success does. And so this spurs a question that I've always had. So I saw back in 2017 and 18, Justin Trudeau and the Liberal Party really pushing their goals of bringing in more and more Syrian refugees in general, but a lot of them coming from Syria. And I have to admit, I was quite critical of the number of immigrants that we were bringing, refugees, shall I say, that we were bringing in from these war-torn countries. And the reason I was critical wasn't about the numbers, but the fact that I've got the impression that there's not a lot of support for these people. And it looks good from a political standpoint to say, hey, look how many people we're bringing in. But you mentioned the PTSD, you mentioned that these people come from war-torn countries. And so have you got some kind of anecdotal evidence or some idea of how much these people are being supported? Because obviously there's a massive journey on that first day they arrive and getting settled, but then there's the months after.
Right.
And is our government doing, in your view, a good enough job of making sure these people are looked after, not just on the first day of arrival or the first week, but months later, to make sure that these domestic disputes, domestic issues aren't happening, or if these people need to be, either have counseling services or medication are being taken care of?
Well, I think this is a very important question. I think that, being an immigrant, although I'm not a refugee and I don't have any barriers to the language, but certainly imagine those people who have been, travel over from afar and having, those traumatic experience from their own country of origin. They flee from the country because of a lot of reasons, for safety, security reasons for the children. Imagine that with the language barrier. And many of them have large family. Right. And I actually personally witnessed them. One family, for example, her husband died in the war, and wow. She has 5 children, and among the 5 children, 2 of them are twins, and they were from the age of 2 to 6, with the 5 children. Just imagine that. And having to listen to the story through our interpreter, because we actually hire staff who can speak the language Arabics and also Turkish. So we were able to do through the translation. I pick up a few languages as well to welcome them, but imagine that, but let's fast forward. I mean, it's been a number of years now. And as you have seen, maybe perhaps there are a study actually held by Vancity, did a study in looking at the longitudinal study about refugees come to Canada. In fact, are they a burden, or they actually helping us to grow our economy? So certainly that longitudinal study shows that actually, many of the refugees and newcomers actually helping to set up a business, to hire, new staff, and also grow our economy in a way. And I think that certainly speak to the fact that, our country thrive with immigrations. As you know, we don't have enough population to support the baby boomers generation now, is into the senior years. You know, the first 75 years old of baby boomers already here. So, so imagine the population come after the baby boomers. We don't have that population to support those elderly cluster. So we thrive on immigration. And certainly, you know, for those people who are economically capable, certainly it's great. But also, I think over time, those people who are not coming, not as economic or financially capable, but they actually have either established their business, hire new employees or new staff, as well as, you know, or maybe they could be employed in the industry where we are such a shortage of labor, such as you know, in healthcare.
Yeah.
Right now we are
for sort of the same reason you came to Canada.
Exactly. And you know, and some of the industry like IT, you know, phenomenally we need those, you know, professional like accountants, healthcare, doctors, you know, engineer. We need those. And certainly, you know, even with the people, the local people that we have, we still don't have enough.
Sure. Yeah.
So I think that in the long run, I think this is going to support the economy of Canada.
I agree with you, Queenie. Look, I mean, I just think of all the hardworking people I know, and many of them are either first-generation Canadians or they actually immigrated from another country. And it's a classic case of, you know, you come from another country, you come for a better life, and you get the land of opportunity here, if you want to call it the American dream. I think some people will be offended by that, but it's the kind of the concept of you come to a country like this, you've made that long of a journey, you might as well, you know, really go for it and develop. But I guess going back to the question of let's use this lady whose husband died in the war, and she has 5 children. Are we doing enough in your view? Like when you observe what's going on, because you're seeing these people, I'm assuming, or your team is, not just weeks after, but years, because it sounds like S.U.C.C.E.S.S provides them with ongoing support. But are there people slipping through the cracks? Are there refugees? Because not all of them are going to land on their feet. Not all of them are going to build a business and hire people. There are going to be people who maybe like this lady are struggling to get by, because I think I know a lot of single moms who are struggling to get by, and they're not having to worry about language barriers. They don't have 5 kids. So when I think about this woman, are her children actually getting the support they need from our society to make them thrive, in your opinion?
Well, I think that certainly there are stories that certainly fell through the crack, and that's the reality, you know. And I think that certainly we have provided some programs to help them, for example, child minding, so that they have the child care on site while they are learning English language. They also provided with occupational health, occupational specific language training. That means if you want to be a hairdresser, you actually learn those particular language and skill to be a hairdresser.
Right.
If you want to be a seamstress, that was your past career or job in the country of origin, then learn specifically about the language in, you know, tailoring seamstress world. So at least that they will have the skill set to stand on their feet economically. And certainly there are people who are struggling, and totally get it, because I think that it would have a bit of a hard time for adults to transition to a different culture and different country. But I think children actually transition very easy. I just wanted to share with you a story again.
Yeah, I love stories.
Okay.
So tell that this is my best part.
Okay, so we knew that one of the way to help integrate people would be difficult. You know, just imagine, you know, what is Canadian? What actually is Canadian? Tell me about that, right? So we thought using sports. So the first time we brought 12 Syrian children to the Rogers Arena in partnership with Hockey Night Canada. Of course, this is all pre-COVID.
Yeah.
It's a number of years now. So the first time, they never seen ice hockey in their life. You know, imagine, you know, it's cold, you know, like it's ice skating. So we did, and lo and behold, the announcer in the arena said, I really appreciate what he said. He said, please welcome additional 12 new fans to the Canucks. So that really made my day because the announcer did not stigmatize. These are refugee children. He did not say these people, are the children of the refugees and they just landed, that kind of thing. So I was so appreciating the way it was said.
Yeah, that's nice.
And that was very inclusive.
Yeah.
In a way, that's my value, being inclusive community and helping them to integrate. We help the children to do the banners, go Canucks go on the banners. And for the first time, they couldn't even spell in English, okay? Right. But they picked it up so quickly when we said go Canucks go, so on the banner and helping them to do it before we actually walked to the arena because S.U.C.C.E.S.S headquarters is so close to the Rogers Arena. Yeah. So it's on Pender. So it was an amazing experience. And we got lots of very, very encouraging comments, remarks, coast to coast because of this. We use sports the way to integrate people, rather than assimilate people. Yeah. So that is truly a welcoming community, we think.
Well, that's a good story, Queenie. And did the Canucks win that night? Do you remember?
Yes, we did. We did.
Well, that's good. That's great. Well, that's a good story, and I think that's a really good summary of where S.U.C.C.E.S.S is and what you're doing today. So, continued success with S.U.C.C.E.S.S.
Thank you so much.
Let's jump to John Horgan last year in, I believe was it in April of last year, I think, or February.
Yep. April. No, April 2nd.
April of last year.
2020. Yep.
Yeah, 2020. He announced what they called the Provincial Economic Recovery Task Force. And there's a number of people who've been included in this task force. In fact, one of our alumni, Prem Gill, who came on to our show last year, or maybe it was a year and a half ago, from Creative BC. And a lady I also know who I've met years ago, Anita Huberman. And Anita, if you're listening, I'd love to have you on the show as well. She's with the CEO of the Surrey Board of Trade. And yourself. So maybe if we could start talking a bit about the recovery, because the vaccine's here, and I think a lot of people are optimistic that by the summertime most people will be vaccinated. Sounds like by September everybody should be, and we need to get our economy back up and running because government support can't last forever, and even when it's coming today, it's costing us. We just haven't paid for it yet. So can you maybe talk a little bit about your role in this Economic Recovery Task Force and what's been accomplished? Let's get into that topic. I think it's a really interesting one.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, it is my, really honest to be appointed as part of the Economic Recovery Task Force of the premiers in BC. And certainly that task force consists of, many business leaders and as you mentioned, labor as well as, entertainment industry to bring it together, and nonprofits, of course, and bring it together to help to support the economic recovery. Hopefully, it doesn't take a long time for the recovery. And certainly we wanted to make sure BC continues to thrive in the financial and also employment area. And this group of leaders would be able to make suggestions and recommendations to the Premier in looking at how we can make an impact to the COVID-19 pandemic era, and also hopefully is post-COVID as well, that we quickly recover from the negative impact by the COVID-19 pandemic.
Okay. Well, that's good. That's a good summary. Now, your particular role in this task force, where do you see that fitting in?
So my area is certainly, partly is business, but partly is also nonprofits, a major in nonprofits. As you know, S.U.C.C.E.S.S is one of the largest nonprofit social service agencies in Canada. not only in BC, and we wanted to make sure, nonprofits have a seat at the table. And we want to make sure nonprofits, as you know, that have been providing tons and tons of social services or services in a community where programs do not receive any government funding for, So for the number, thousands and thousands of people, British Columbia is receiving those services, rely on nonprofits putting out those programs. And very often than not is nonprofit fundraise for those money in order to sustain those programs for the vulnerable people in the community, or people have the needs but do not but those programs do not receive government funding. So as imagine during COVID-19 pandemic, we could not have big gatherings, so galas is out,
Yes, that's right.
and everything has to be virtual.
And they're not really working. I mean, these virtual galas are, they're still raising some money, but yeah.
But it's so different from the mode of delivery, the crowds, that catching the people to donate, that kind of, charisma of that kind of attraction of that gala fundraising. And certainly, a lot of, philanthropic world has been voicing out is, there is no venue, and this is very tough for the nonprofit worlds to fundraise. So subsequently, a lot of nonprofits been having such a challenging time to fund those programs that is so meaningful and needed in the community.
Are there any in particular that you are concerned are struggling to stay relevant? Nonprofits, I don't know if you can name some that you're worried that you see how important they are to British Columbia, and they're really struggling maybe because they aren't fully funded by the provincial or federal government.
Well, there are a lot of nonprofits, talking about, the Stroke Foundation, for example.
Okay, sure.
Is people's health, right? So a lot of education programs that put out by the Stroke Foundations that otherwise, if there is no funding, it wouldn't be happening.
Right.
And this is for the overall promotion and health promotion of the population. I'm just naming a few, but certainly, the social service programs, counseling programs that are for specific demographics to reach out to them with the language that they understand. Seniors, how to support the seniors living in the community during pandemic. How to actually support people using the helpline. And I think that many of those opportunities, we can support those nonprofits to continue their job. Whether it's food bank or, any of those, nonprofits helping, for example, single mom helping, the YWCA helping those single women to be able to survive, really. So all those nonprofits really, provide us those wonderful, terrific programs that be sustainable in the community to those people who, in fact, be able to survive and thrive. Otherwise,
right. We haven't seen many corporations claim insolvency yet, and we've actually seen the number of personal insolvencies decline during this pandemic. Strangely, not completely strangely, because there's been a lot of government fund support programs with like SERB and whatnot. What about in the nonprofit space? Because I haven't researched this. Are there nonprofits that are actually just closing their doors because they don't have the funding, or have they managed to most of them to be able to stay intact, but maybe just have to limit how much they've been able to do?
Well, there are some nonprofits, as you know, the Vancouver Aquarium, for example. They try to fundraise, and so certainly there are a lot of organization like that. Depending on fundraising or depending on the traffic from people. People have to buy the ticket in order to sustain the operation, and because of pandemic, there's no big gathering. You cannot do that. So I think people are on the holding mode right
Okay.
now. Certainly, you heard about the laying off a lot of employees. Airline industries and certainly they are on a holding mode. And we kind of people are just waiting for the moment. The light
Yeah.
at the end of the
Yeah.
tunnel really is to when it's going to, back to a bit of normalcy
Sure.
economically.
Well, that's good. That's a good segue into my last question or a couple questions on this topic. So light at the end of the tunnel. I think a lot of people would agree with my statement. I think that the governments, not just the British Columbia government, but most governments around the world were too slow to act with this pandemic. And I actually really concerned that are also at the same time our same governments are going to be too slow to unwind some of these restrictions out of a fear of getting crucified for health concerns. And there has to be a balance at some point between health concerns and like getting the economy going. So when you look at the Economic Recovery Task Force, I mean, the name itself clearly states what it's supposed to do. What can you speak about with respect to that task force that's been accomplished so far that people might not be aware of? Like, what are some of the one or two things that you look at? I mean, it was formed almost a year ago now. So your group has been involved in this for a year. What things has been successful with this task force?
Well, as you know, tourism industry in Vancouver, British Columbia is like grind to the halt.
Yeah.
No cruise ship comes, and it's not just the cruise ship docking, but also the associated industry,
Yes.
like restaurant, hotel, etc., food. It's there's a very deep impact to those associated industry as well. So tourism was hard hit. Is also continues to be hard hit. So as you heard, the government's announcement about, the significant injection into the industry, I think, certainly that is well appreciated. But I think in the long run, we've got to think about, what is going to happen to the survival of that industry. I know that in the Low Mainland, especially Vancouver, attracts millions of people to come to our beautiful city and province. Certainly, it has been significantly reduced with the tourism. So in the long run, as a survival mode, how and what process needs to be put in place to ensure, as we scale down the restriction, how are we going to step up with the survival of those industries in tourism, for example?
This is a really important question.
So I think there's a very delicate balance to strike for people. And I think that in order to make sure that we needed to have that industry continues to survive, and while protecting the health and safety of local people as well as people coming to our province. I think that's vitally important to do that. So, again, time will tell. Probably maybe towards the end of summer when the vaccine, that we heard that the vaccination campaign really kind of that everybody would be offered a vaccine by the end of the summer, and we're hoping that at that point in time the restriction will be gradually lifted, and certain industry like tourism would be able to continue to gradually revive, to put it this way.
Well, I guess you can't really have a recovery task force do much when you're not in the recovery period because we're still in the middle of what we're dealing with. So
That's right.
But I think your task is mostly in front of you here. Okay, this has been great. Now we're going to get into my part I was really excited to talk to you about here because it's quite a sensitive topic. So we're going to switch gears from the economy to talk about racism. As a Caucasian male, I must admit I've had a hard time understanding this sort of rise in Asian or anti-Asian opinions. Or views or racism. I'm not even sure if I'm forming this question properly, so I might be a little bit politically incorrect in the way I'm forming it. But no better person to ask than a figurehead like yourself, well-established leader in our community, female and Asian. And so I'd like to talk about this because I think it's important that people hear it from someone like yourself. And so maybe to start with, a really simple but maybe dumb question, like, is there actually a rising sort of anti-Asian sentiment in our society today?
Absolutely.
Really?
The answer to your question is yes.
Okay.
We see the evidence. We see it in the media. We see it when people, talk about it, their own experience. So certainly, it's not just, Asian people, but also, people of color, and especially women. And you've seen the tragic incident happen in Atlanta in the U.S. Certainly, those tragic fatality and killing. It's really very disturbing, and I think that Canada is not immune to it. If we don't do anything now, it would happen to us sooner than later. And I think this is important for us as a country which embrace the value of diversity and inclusion, that we needed to make sure this doesn't happen in our communities.
So let's take personally myself, a white male. I don't consider myself racial. I'm not a saint by any sense. I'm sure my employees will all agree that I've made the odd comment that's supposed to be funny. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. Can you help educate me as a white male on where are the problems? Who's creating this sentiment? Why is it happening? I mean, I don't believe I'm doing it, but maybe I'm part of the problem. I don't know. Can you help educate me on this?
So I think that racism against any of the demographics shouldn't have a place in our communities, and however, it existed for many, many years. Okay, even before COVID. But COVID, really, when COVID arrived, it actually exacerbated the whole situation of, anti-Asian racism. And some political leader in the South even call it China virus,
Right.
So which doesn't help. There are a lot of Asian people, and Asian people consist of many, many, backgrounds. It's not just Chinese.
Yes, of
So
course.
I think that it's very important that people understand the feelings of those people of color, and especially the victims of racism and hate crime. The other piece is I also wanted to send a message, and let me be clear about this message. I think every one of us, whether you're of color or a white person, we need to be super sensitive about who are around us, what we said, who we said to, and what kind of remarks that the person make, and how the receiver is taking those messages. I think we got to be very sensitive what we said, how we said it. Racism is a learned behavior, and it can be unlearned.
To finish off on this topic, you said it's a learned behavior, which I completely agree with you. You've also brought up the point of being sensitive to people around us when we're making comments. And again, I'll admit I've made lots in my past, and I probably make them even today, and I will in the future. And maybe because I'm trying to be funny. My concern is, and I'd like you to address this for me, please. Like, my concern is that we become too sensitive, that we become so focused on political correctness that we can't express ourselves. I have to admit, I'm even having a hard time having this conversation with you about this, because I'm worried that people are going to say, well, there's a typical white guy who doesn't know the first thing about what it's like to be targeted as, towards racism, which is true, probably. So on the other end of the spectrum, do you think we could be going too far and worrying about being too sensitive, being too politically correct, and not even being able to express or be, to have some humor in our day?
I think there is a balance to be strike, and I think the other piece is this is a really good segue to talk about, we need to have training, education program,
Okay.
especially for those people who are unaffected. As you said, the white guy like me, I'm not affected. How would I know that I'm actually being too sensitive and I worry about saying the wrong phrase or wrong word to the people of color? So I think that, certainly.
Which I worry about all the time, I never did
And-
when I was in my teens 'cause I didn't care and no one told me about this.
And that's why we would really like to make a recommendations to the government to fund educational program for historical and contemporary racism in Canada and in its all forms.
Okay.
That is so important for people to understand. This has been happening, and what is it now? To show those people that who otherwise would not have the same appreciations as those people who are affected.
Mm-hmm. Okay. That'd be interesting to do. I'd sign up for that training because I am really concerned about offending people. And sometimes I just choose not to say anything because I'm worried about, saying something that I shouldn't. So this is good. This is really good conversation. I do agree that it's a learned behavior, and I think it's also something we need to be willing to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
One of the other comments I'll make is that as a Caucasian male, I think one of the reasons why I struggle to talk about this is because I'm worried that people will, just by me asking questions, will immediately say, well, you're just being racist by asking those questions. And it's really more for me just wanting to learn and be educated.
No, I think you're absolutely dead on. I think that if you can talk about it, the individual have no willingness to extend themselves for the appreciation what's been going on in certain demographics.
Yes.
So by you extending, to talk about it, it really shows that you're certainly open in your views of what's been happening around us
Mm-hmm.
and in us, in our community. So thank you very much for that.
Do you worry at all about the cancel culture of people who are maybe being canceled just for one small tweet, comment? What are your thoughts on that?
And I think that if we so worry about what, so limiting for us to do X, Y, Z, I think that certainly it really hampers us in a way that to express ourselves in this democratic world.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it's important to stand on the firm belief. What we do believe is diversity, and that's our values.
Mm-hmm.
And democracy is our value of the country. And being diverse and being inclusive, creating that inclusive community, if that's what we believe in, I think whatever we do, we stem from it.
Yes, yeah, and I'm a big believer in inclusiveness too. So let's keep pounding the table on that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Let's jump to thank you because that's a sensitive topic. I mean, maybe it's easy for you to talk about it. I can admit it wasn't that easy for me. Yeah.
Before we jump to the next one,
Yeah.
I just wanted to add one more thing. If
Yeah,
that's okay
yeah.
for this section. Do you mind just talking about if it's difficult at all? I mean, Andrew, you can ask this
Yeah.
question, but how difficult it is for a new immigrant family to really speak up about racism? They're new to the country, and even if they experience it, maybe I don't know what your experience is.
That's a really good question. Do you mind if we ask that one?
Hey, no.
Okay,
So-
because we're recording,
Okay.
I'll tie that in with success. Okay. Okay, good. Okay, that's a good one. Good job, Queenie. Before we jump to the last topic, to finish off on the racism. I want to tie it back to success and these immigrant families that you support as they come into our country. Do they struggle to identify the racism or speak up about it or know how to address it? Is that something that you give them coaching on? I mean, many of these people are probably coming from countries that I'm assuming, if you're coming from Syria, it's probably a pretty homogeneous culture, and they come to a place like this. And So maybe can you comment on that?
Sure, absolutely. And actually, that's why I emphasize so much on providing training and education, making sure people are equipped with the tools should that situation happen. So at S.U.C.C.E.S.S, we actually offer the bystander training, for whoever witnessing or affected by the situation of racism or hate crime, how they should be reacting to the situation. So this is fairly new, especially for newcomers who come to a country, as you mentioned. They are from a different culture. They probably would not be reporting to the law enforcement authority because of their belief in, not reporting before in their home country. So definitely that kind of training is so critically important for people to really give them the tools that they would need in different situations as they come across in our communities.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for that. Okay, Queenie, let's jump to the last item, which is around vaccinations. We're filming this in late March. Had to get the months right there. So we're just late March. There was an article published by the CBC which made claim that Chinatown seniors have been left behind in this vaccine rollout. What are your thoughts on that claim, and how do you see us reaching the finish line while ensuring that everyone who wants to get the vaccination gets it?
Thank you for the question. And not only in Chinatown, not only seniors in Chinatown, no one should be left out in any communities, period. This is very important. The article speak to about, the vulnerability of seniors in Chinatown because of the multiple barriers, language, culture, etc., and access to internet of information that, you and I could navigate on the internet and get the information. But if they don't have that capability, accessing online information, they will be, the hands are tied, and they don't have that, the knowledge or information they need to make those decisions. So rightly so. And definitely at S.U.C.C.E.S.S, we offer a number of programs. First of all, if those people who are listening, we already had one webinars being hosted last Saturday, but it's recorded, it's on YouTube, that we actually host a seminar on vaccine and its rollout. It's all delivered in Cantonese the last Saturday. This coming Saturday is going to be in Mandarin. And may I tell you, we have 5,000 viewers on the YouTube.
Wow.
We have over 500 participants registered for the program last Saturday. It shows how much people are longing for the information of vaccine and also its rollout. So we were very fortunate to be able to partner with Vancouver Coastal and having a doctor to speak in the language that those individual understands. So it was so well liked. So that's one. The second piece is also, we are having our volunteers, a S.U.C.C.E.S.S volunteer, to be men, to be assigned to different vaccine centers, to be able to be like a greeters, like Walmart greeters, like to help people understand where to go, what question would they have, what document they need to produce, like our care card, and when to roll up your sleeve and how to ask questions. So those volunteers were served at each of the vaccine centers. So, and certainly this is a community-based organization helping in partnering with Vancouver Coastal. But we are very proud of be able to offer that services and be able to help those vulnerable in the community. So again, we do have some affordable housing that we operate right in the heart of Chinatown. So what we have been doing is with our tenant support workers, we've been helping out those individuals who have hardship or challenges in accessing the vaccine and center or information, or even calling to book the appointment. we actually have those tenant support workers in our building to help those seniors to get the appointment booked. Certainly, is it enough? Certainly, we are hoping that mobilizing this message, helping people to access the information they need. I'm sure there's must be a leader or champion in each of the buildings in downtown East Side or Chinatown to be able to help those individuals who need help. And not only that, we also are actually offering up our auditorium in our headquarters located in Chinatown. To be one of the vaccine center. We're hoping people would be familiar with the location and is public transit
Is that
accessible. Right now, we still wanted to offer to the Vancouver Coastal. I think they are looking at setting it up.
Okay.
So this is a good news. And for those people who are not familiar with the other location that closest to Chinatown, which is like the Creekside Community Center, they could have come to Chinatown, our headquarters. And certainly we would have our volunteers to help out at our center as well.
Okay. Wow. Well, that's good. Well, it sounds like your organization or S.U.C.C.E.S.S is doing lots to help this rollout, and that's amazing stats on the YouTube videos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was very surprised. Well, it was kind of a nice surprise, and I'm sure that this is going to be very much well received. And if you stay tuned, there will be a webinar in different languages, like for example Farsi,
Okay.
and Punjabi, and hoping that people will be able to access those webinar and be able to tap into those resources.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's obvious that just from that first video you did that sometimes the biggest barrier is just the language barrier.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, this has been great. Queenie Choo, you're the Chief Executive Officer of S.U.C.C.E.S.S and a community leader. This has been a wonderful conversation. We've touched on some really neat topics, and I really appreciate you coming in today. So thank you for coming into Coastal Front.
Thank you, Andrew. You're amazing.